Hello everyone, Tmmgamer, and today I have the pleasure of bringing you another one of my football talk videos, the series where I sit down and talk a little bit about real life football. And as I talked a little bit about yesterday, today's video is going to be focusing on Aston Villa, because as most of you guys know, I'm an Aston Villa fan. I know somebody has to be, but we're actually in quite an interesting period for the club, and this is actually quite an important month or so coming up for us. So I wanted to just sit down and talk about what I think and what I think's really gone on so far in the transfer window and how I think the club's shaping up. So obviously the first thing to really say is Randy Lerner has put the club up for sale. So there's a lot of Aston Villa fans, and I spend a lot of my time just browsing Sky Sports News. Whenever I've got a spare 10 minutes on my phone, I'll be looking at all the football news. I'll be, whenever I go on the computer, I always do the same couple of websites. I have a look on the BBC, see if there's any breaking news, have a look on Sky Sports, then go onto YouTube and have a poodle. And whenever I've read anything about Aston Villa, there's been comments from people saying, this isn't good enough, we need to be spending money, we need to be doing this, we need to sign all of these players. And realistically, we can't accept that's going to happen, because we have a chairman who wants to sell the football club. And if you're, for example, if you're going to sell your car, are you going to spend £1,000 on a new engine? No, of course you're not. Of course you're not. You're going to patch it up as best as you can, and then you're going to try and sell it for as much money as possible. It's one of those deals. So there's no way Randy Lerner is going to go out and spend 30 million this transfer window. So when I accepted that, and I think every single fan out there has to accept that, I was really worried that we wouldn't sign anyone at all. But I have to say, I'm actually quite pleased with the signings we've made so far. And if you guys have been, doing a hermit and living in a cave somewhere, I'm going to run you through the signings we've actually made. We signed Philippe Senderos on a free, which actually isn't bad at all. Philippe Senderos has got a lot of Premier League experience, he's got a lot of international experience, and yes, it is international experience for Switzerland. He isn't the star player in the German side, for example, but he's still pretty solid. He's a very, very solid player, and centre-back was one of the areas where we absolutely desperately needed to strengthen. Absolutely desperately. When you have a look at our team, there are so many average centre-backs. Look at Nathan Baker, look at Kieran Clark. They're absolutely average players, and it's a bit of a shame because both of them came through the youth system with a lot of potential and a lot of talk about them as being very, very high quality centre-backs of the future. But I think they just need a little bit of time on loan at a championship club to get a bit of experience, because they've just got a cataclysmic error in them, and you cannot afford as Aston Villa to have centre-backs with cataclysmic errors in them. We've got Ron Vlaar, and I'll come on to Ron Vlaar in a little bit more, but we've got Ron Vlaar, we've got Joris Okore coming back, and Philippe Senderos, and those three centre-backs are pretty solid. Okore was linked to Chelsea before he came to us. He said he wanted to come to us to play first-team football. Vlaar had an absolutely phenomenal World Cup, and Senderos, experienced Premier League player, international player, snaps him up on a free transfer. Pretty good signing. And then another player who we've signed is Kieran Richardson, again on a free transfer. And Kieran Richardson, again, player with a lot of Premier League experience. I think he's a player who's been underutilised a lot as well. He's a player who's always been known to be a good Premier League player. He obviously burst on the scene when he went on loan to West Brom in that miracle season when they became the first club ever in Premier League history to stay up after being bottom at Christmas. He really roared through in that season. He made his England debut, he scored a couple of goals for England, and everybody thought, wow, this is going to be a next England international. And then unfortunately, he, as many players do, he went back to Manchester United after his loan finished. He didn't play, and his career sort of went downhill a little bit there, but he's always been a solid player. And the good thing about Kieran Richardson as well, in a squad as paper thin as Aston Villa's, he's a versatile player. He can play left back, he can play left mid, he's played centre mid before, he can play in behind the striker, he can play wide. He's a very, very versatile player, and he's a player that I think will actually have a decent impact, because when you have a look at it again, I think he's been bought to be our left back, because we've had Ryan Bertrand in on loan, and it's highly unlikely that he's going to sign for us again. I have to say Bertrand, I think, did a very, very good job for us. But before that, we had Antonio Luna, who had a very good start to the season, then really petered off. And we've got Joe Bennett at the club, who I think is an ideal understudy left back. I think Joe Bennett has the potential to be a good Premier League left back in a couple of years' time. But again, In a lower mid-table club, which Aston Villa are at the moment, you cannot afford to have Joe Bennett play every week because, like I mentioned with a player like Kieran Clark or Nathan Baker, he's got a bit of a mistake in him, which is a worrying trait. So hopefully bringing Kieran Richardson in as a little bit of a experienced head, teach Joe Bennett a little bit about Premier League football and hopefully bring him on, that'll be a good thing. And our last signing, Joe Cole, again, free transfer, again, experienced Premier League player, but this time Joe Cole was an established England international, arguably one of the most naturally gifted England players in a long time. Unfortunately for Joe, he had a lot of injuries, fell out of form, had one of those unfortunate stop-start careers where he had a lot of promise and played some brilliant games, played for a lot of big teams, but unfortunately injuries and competition meant that he didn't have the seamless career that he would have envisaged. But is still a very good player, and that is another area of real weakness for us in this Aston Villa squad. We really do lack a creative, forward-thinking midfield. If you look at our three, it's pretty standard midfielders. It's El Amadi, it's Westwood, and it's Delph, and all three of them are pretty solid, but all three of them are quite defensive, sitting. They've got a sitting mentality, and that meant that what normally happened is Lambert would play, all three of them, and he'd play up front Weimann, Benteke, and Agbonlahor when all of them were fit. And that would leave a massive gap between the front three and the midfield three, and we desperately needed someone in that hole to just pass the ball around. And Joe Cole's not getting any younger. He's not as fast as he once was, but he's still got a good pass. He can still get an odd goal. And if he plays 20 games for us and gets 5 goals and 5 assists, I reckon that'll be a very, very good return. And again, he's a free transfer. There's not any real risk there involved for the football club. So I'm pretty pleased with all those 3 transfers. They've definitely addressed areas of weakness for us. And like I mentioned, we aren't going to be spending 30 million. So that's not a bad transfer window so far. When you look at the players we've been linked with as well, on top of that, we've been linked with Nicholas Bentner, who I'm so pleased it looks like we're not going to sign him, because I really don't rate Nicholas Bentner at all. What really confuses me about Nicholas Bentner as well is he's decent, I guess. He's an okay Premier League striker. He thinks he's God's gift to football. The absolutely ridiculous news stories have been coming out that Arsenal have accepted bids from all of these clubs, and they've been scared off because his wage demands are simply ludicrous. It's just, I really don't understand football players like this. They are paid silly amounts of money, absolutely silly amounts of money. They are paid 4, 5, 6 times in a week what a good wage would be in a year. If you earn 20k a year, people would say, yeah, you're doing all right for yourself. That's a decent wage. People are earning 60,000, 70,000 a week for being mediocre Premier League players. Let's not even talk about the astronomical wages the highest players are on. So the absolute ludicrous greed of Nicholas Bentner is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So I'm so glad we seem to have completely written him off, because we're a club who not exactly have the highest wage bill. We've had a massive wage bill under O'Neill, and then Paul Lambert's job has really been to rein that back in, and that's why we've saw players like Darren Bent and so on get farmed out on loan to try and reduce the wage bill a little bit. So I'm pleased with that. Another couple of players we've been linked with. We've been linked with Key from Swansea for 6 million, and this was the one that was really confusing me, because I wasn't expecting really any money to be available, and then all of a sudden we're going to be spending 6 million on a Swansea squad player, and I'm not too sure about that. And there's been some rumours in the press as well that Matthew Valbuena is going to be moving to West Ham or Newcastle, and he's going to be costing about 6 million. So why would you spend 6 million on Key when you can spend the same amount of money on Valbuena? It's a bit of a strange one, that. Again, like I mentioned, central midfield, an advanced central midfield player who can have an eye for a pass and create a few chances is definitely something we're in the market for. That is definitely something this squad needs. But spending 6 million on Key, I don't think is the best way to spend money. But again, beggars can't be choosers. We're in a situation where, realistically, how likely is it Matthew Valbuena will come and play for Aston Villa? It's not very realistic. Like I mentioned, our wage bill, we're always trying to keep tabs on that. We're trying to rein that back in as much as possible. It's highly, highly unlikely we're going to be offering people 60, 70 grand a week. It's unlikely. So if we do get him, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But I was surprised to see the figure of 6 million. I really, really was. And the player we've been linked with in literally the last couple of days is Victor Moses on a loan from Chelsea. And again, I think this would be a decent loan, because what happened a lot towards the end of last season was, Weimann would play on the wing. And for me, I don't think Andy Weimann is a good winger. He's either a striker, or you play him in that centre-forward role just off Christian Benteke to hoover up the scraps and go from there. So to have somebody who's actually an out-and-out winger, and for me Victor Moses is a decent player. He hasn't really had a good run in the side. He obviously was good at Wigan, then he went to Chelsea, never really got a run in, then he's gone to Liverpool on loan, again, never really got a run in. Because Liverpool, they played their very, very solid system of Suarez, Sturridge, Coutinho. You're not going to get in ahead of those players if you're Victor Moses. That's the simple fact of the matter. So getting him on loan would actually be quite a good thing. I'm looking forward, if we actually get Victor Moses, to see him play regularly and see how he goes. I think that would actually be a pretty decent signing for us. So that's the transfer market. The most important thing, I think, for Aston Villa, though, at the moment, is signing our key players onto long-term contracts. And we've got 3 of our key players coming up into their last year of their deals. And I mentioned this earlier: Ron Vlaar, Fabian Delph, Gabriel Agbonlahor, and they are 3 of our key players. There's no doubt about it, especially Delph and Vlaar. But Gabby is a club legend. I know it sounds strange to think that Gabriel Agbonlahor is a club legend for Aston Villa, but he is our record all-time Premier League goal scorer, and I don't think a lot of people realise that outside of Aston Villa. He is a proper club legend, and he's a local boy. He's always said, if Villa want me, I never want to leave. So we just have to offer him a deal. He does a good job for us. He's a player who, you know what you're going to get from Gabriel Agbonlahor. You're going to get a lot of effort. You're going to get someone who's got a lot of pace. He puts himself about. Yeah, he doesn't have the highest goal return of all time, but what a lot of people don't realise is that he's played left wing for the vast majority of, basically 2.5 years he's played out of position, and he still does a good job for us. And whenever we have a good week, Gabriel Agbonlahor is always a solid part of that, and we definitely need him. Ron Vlaar, that goes without saying. He had a phenomenal World Cup. He is arguably our best player, certainly our best defender. Captain, does a lot of good work for us, and he has to stay. He has to be offered a deal. Just the worst thing I could see happening is Ron Vlaar leaving on a free, though. So if he won't accept a contract, we have to sell him and get some money for him and reinvest it. Because we can't have the situation in a year's time where Ron Vlaar leaves on a free. That would just be a travesty for Aston Villa. So that's Ron Vlaar and Fabian Delph. And to be honest, I'm absolutely delighted with what Fabian Delph's come out and said in the press. He's come out and said, I don't want to leave Aston Villa. I'm happy here. I want to stay. I want a new deal. And I can't believe he hasn't been given one already. He's a key player for us. He really is. Like I mentioned, big tackler of the football. He really just put himself about. He's actually surprisingly good on the ball as well. When you see Fabian Delph once or twice, if you've watched him, you'll think, he's just straightforward. He's a hard worker. He puts himself about, got a good challenge on him. But he's actually quite technically gifted. And we aren't going to get a Fabian Delph for an equivalent amount of money. We really aren't. We have to keep hold of players like this. And this is why I mentioned, and this is why I wanted to do this football talk, because this is actually a really key part in Aston Villa's lineage. This next month or two, if we can get Victor Moses on loan, if we can get another centre mid, if we can sign new deals for Vlaar, for Delph, for Agbonlahor, we can go into the new season actually not looking too bad. Certainly looking a lot better than I was thinking we were going to look. So, and realistically, where are we going to finish this season? If we finished 14th, I'd be quite happy with that. If we finished 10th, that would be unbelievable. It really would. We are in a situation where Paul Lambert has been given a job to basically get as many players in on low wages as he can, and that's why we've been trying to buy players like Yakuba Silla, and Yakuba Silla's left us on loan, but players like Westwood and Bennett and Loughton and all of these sorts of guys, because we don't have the money to offer such high wages. And a lot of people say, well, Paul Lambert spent a lot of money, he spent X amount of million. Yeah, but he's also saved probably more than that in transfer money through reducing the wage bill. So he's let all these players go, he's brought in players from League One and the Championship on drastically lower wages. So in reality, Paul Lambert has operated on quite a shoestring budget when it is compared to the budgets that Martin O'Neill had to offer. And this summer especially, that has been stretched to the absolute limit because we've got so few options available to us in terms of what we can buy. We're basically plundering the free transfer market, and that's basically it. So for us to be in a position now where we're actually looking reasonable, I'm quite happy with how it's gone. I really am. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. As you can see, I've just conceded a despicable corner goal in the footage over the top there. But as always with this sort of video, it's more about the football talk itself. I'd actually be interested to hear what you guys have to say about Aston Villa, because one of the things that I've noticed with the internet is that there's so much polarising opinion that it's normally only the 5% of people on either end of the spectrum that you hear. So when there's a little bit of pressure on, that 5% of people screaming and throwing their toys out of the pram are the only ones you hear. And when there's a good run, the 5% of people who are predicting Champions League victories are the only ones you hear. And the 90% of people in the middle who have brain cells and sense sort of get whitewashed over. And a realistic look at Aston Villa, I think we are making progress. And again, we're desperate for a Saudi billionaire to come in and invest. But at the moment, with the resources we have, with the playing staff we have, with the fact that the owner wants to sell the club, I don't think we're doing too badly, and I'd be really interested in hearing what you guys have to say. So once again, thank you so much for watching the video, and as always, have a great day.